Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of the Richard Haynes Real Estate Show. I am your host, Richard Haynes, the real estate broker and owner here at Haynes Real Estate in the South Bay of Greater Los Angeles, where we focus on Manhattan Beach, Hermosa Beach, Redondo Beach, and the Palos Verdes Peninsula. It has been a long drought since we've had our last podcast. Forgive me, you guys. It's been a crazy spring into summer. And now that school has started, we've got a little bit more free time to get back to the podcast, back to posting this on YouTube, and getting a lot more written blogs up for you all to keep up with the South Bay real estate market. I promise we'll get back into the groove here for you so you can get a podcast once or twice a month. Many of you have been asking for guests. I want guests too. It takes a lot of work to schedule people, get multiple cameras, and of course take the multiple hours of interviewing, editing to get that to you. But I know how valuable guests are to many of you, and we are going to try and focus on that towards the end of 2025 and into 2026. But for now, you're stuck with me as an individual. I'm going to try and give you guys some of the latest real estate news nationally, locally, and of course, hard data here and a little bit of anecdotal as evidence spliced in. What I want to cover today are two topics, and then we're going to get right back at it with the podcast for you here in another week or two with even more data since I've had such a long absence. But the two topics today are, number one, the big beautiful bill, which was passed about a month or so ago, and its effects on the real estate market and how it might affect you here in the South Bay. And then, of course, we wrapped up the second quarter at the end of July, so we've got some really great second quarter data in and around the South Bay, and I'm going to give you a little sprinkling in of what we are seeing anecdotally around the marketplace. So let's jump right into it. The big beautiful bill. We're going to really just cut to some of the most impactful aspects of the bill for real estate owners, investors, and buyers here, our clients in the South Bay. I want to start off first that I am not a CPA. I am not a tax attorney. I am in no means an expert on reading bills signed by the president and Congress, and I am not an expert in IRS tax law. Please take these ideas that we have well researched, but run them by your CPA, hire a tax attorney, and make sure you can actually do them for your specific situation. These are just for you to spark ideas and how it may affect the South Bay real estate, but please hire the proper professionals. So without further ado, we're going to jump right into it. The biggest item for real estate here in the South Bay that came out of the big beautiful bill was the SALT tax increase. What does SALT tax mean? State and local taxes. One of the biggest items in the Trump tax reform back in 2017 that it hurt many blue states, many coastal states with high state taxes, high property taxes that they used to be able to deduct that went away in 2017. So let me give you an example here. Back in 2017, SALT taxes were limited to just a $10,000 deduction. So, for instance, let's say you made $200,000 here in in California, and you had a 10% tax rate. That would be $20,000, that some people were used to writing off on their federal tax returns to stay on to save on federal tax. When the Tax Cut and Jobs Act passed back in 2017, that limited it to $10,000. So people lost big deductions. On top of that, people also were able to write off their property taxes. So maybe you had lower wages that didn't reach up to $20,000, but you owned a home. You had property taxes that could also be written off. And those were big line items for W-2 wage earners or self-employed individuals who didn't have many tax tricks to save. Well, now with the big beautiful bill, that $10,000 threshold has now been raised to $40,000. So let's say, for instance, you're making that $200,000. You have 10% in state taxes. That's $20,000 that you pay in state taxes. And let's say you have $1 million home assessment and you pay around $12,000 a year. Well, 20,000 plus 12,000 is 32,000. You're able to deduct that $32,000 worth of taxes owed to the state government and local Los Angeles County tax collector and lower your taxable income, which saves you big bucks on federal taxes. So that jump from $10,000 to $40,000, you guys, is absolutely huge, especially for the South Bay, where we have a lot of income earners and expensive property taxes. So even if you're retired and maybe have lower income, if you own a $2 or $3 million house with high property taxes, you can utilize this new SALT tax as a great tax strategy to save money. And then when it comes down to buyers of ours who go, well, Richard, I don't own any real estate, it actually may help you out in a big way, because you're going to all of a sudden, if you decide to buy in the coming year or so, you will be able to find even more deductions when you acquire a property and you are not capped at $10,000. So that is the number one huge bonus that we've seen out of the big beautiful bill. Just keep in mind that it is limited to couples that make $500,000 or less, and it begins to phase out of that where you don't get the cap of $40,000 all the way up to $600,000. So it's something you need to be aware of, where you go, hey, to really fully utilize this amazing new tax benefit, I need to keep my income at $500,000 or less. Make sure you're strategizing with your CPA so you can earn that. Or, of course, if you don't own a property and don't have huge state taxes, are you strategizing to try and come up with ways to either earn more income this year and less next year when you plan to buy a house, or vice versa? So make sure you are calling your CPA to really dial in on this if you already own a home and have big income, or, of course, if you plan on buying a property this year or next. So that is the big item out of the big beautiful bill. Make sure to get on the phone with your CPA regarding this item. Number 2, bonus depreciation. Bonus depreciation really is for real estate investors and business owners, where you get a 100% bonus depreciation that is now permanent for eligible property placed in service on or after January 20th, 2025. And so this allows the full cost of qualifying expenses to be written off in the year they're made instead of over decades. So, for instance, let me give you an example with here in our office. If we buy a computer that has a 5-year life cycle on it, and we buy, let's call it's a really expensive computer, we buy it for $5,000, we're only able to write off $1,000 of that in the first year and $1,000 over the next 5 years until we fully depreciate it. It's much why people don't like to buy cars, because you can buy a $50,000 car for the business and only be able to depreciate a fraction of that if the car has a 10 or 15 year life cycle. But this big beautiful bill act now allows for 100% depreciation. So now you buy that computer, you're able to deduct that computer fully. Again, I'm not a CPA. I got to talk to my CPA on whether we're buying computers this year or next and how bonus depreciation applies. But for all of our listeners here, as real estate owners and investors, this is a big deal because you can play with depreciation on your property. So while entire buildings or the basis of your building doesn't apply and you can't just depreciate the entire value of a duplex or a triplex or a small commercial building that you purchased, you can part out some pieces of the property. Items such as appliances, carpeting, cabinets, HVAC systems, lighting, and landscaping may be able to qualify for bonus depreciation. Now, I wouldn't bet on all of these, especially with how aggressive or conservative your CPA is, but basically I can tell you something like an appliance definitely has a depreciation life. You think about a water heater or an HVAC system. There is a maybe 5 or 10 or 15-year life cycle to some of these items. Can you now 100% bonus depreciate these in a single year? This is especially valuable, again, for high income earners who may qualify as real estate professionals. I'm not going to get into that because many of you can't take 100% bonus depreciation. You have maximum caps on what you can depreciate off of certain income, which is why it's so important for you to speak to your CPA. But where this is particularly helpful is one, high-income individuals who are real estate professionals. And then secondly, anyone who is in the Airbnb business or is looking to put Airbnb into practice this year, because if you buy a beach house that you're going to rent out short term for big rental income, you can rehab many of these old beach bungalows and you're going to bonus depreciate all the new HVAC systems and the water heaters and appliances. And can you depreciate flooring/carpeting? Oh, and by the way, you've got to buy furniture and cutlery and internet items and all the things that go into running an Airbnb that now can be bonus depreciated very early on. Do you use that as a real estate professional to take some nice deductions against your income? Or of course, if the Airbnb is driving huge rents, getting that big time depreciation so that you aren't paying taxes on that cash flow from the Airbnb. Now, in full disclosure, I tell many clients Airbnbs are not worth it in the South Bay. South Bay is very expensive to buy. Airbnb is like running a hotel, so unless you're very close by, you end up doing way more work for a little bit more money, and I just don't know if it pencils, and it is risky if you are betting solely on Airbnb income. You've got to buy property that pencils on 12-month leases, and then Airbnb is a bonus if you like it or the market gets really hot. Another item that is a big one is it makes the mortgage insurance deduction now permanent. It was set to expire at the end of this year. This is something where if you're putting down less than 20%, you are now forced to have mortgage insurance. Well, now you can still deduct that mortgage insurance premium. Of course, there are limitations on how big the mortgage can be, your income. That's why you need to check with your CPA. But it would have been really tough on buyers who are, say, putting 10% down as a first-time home buyer, and you aren't able to deduct those very expensive mortgage insurance premiums. The Big Beautiful Bill also helps with FHA premiums and VA premiums, where you're putting down just say 3.5% down and having really big deductions there. Now, the problem is I do find deals for FHA buyers who are buying in areas of Torrance, Lomita, Hawthorne, and they're buying a duplex or a triplex with an FHA loan. Your income does have to have a threshold of $100,000 or below to have it for FHA and VA, where many clients here in the South Bay are exceeding $100,000 in income to afford these duplexes, rent out one, live in the other. So it may not be as impactful for South Bay residents, but if you live in Lomita, Hawthorne, maybe you're in other areas of Los Angeles that have lower housing prices, you can use this FHA mortgage insurance deduction. Or of course, if you're just buying a condo or a townhome, you can make it work in and around the South Bay, and it's very valuable. So those are going to be my top 3 items. There are other items within the Big Beautiful Bill. that are really great, but we won't get into it. But I want you guys to really focus on the SALT tax deduction increase. That is absolutely massive and is basically going to help everyone here in the South Bay, whether you own property or don't, writing off your income. And of course, if you acquire property and you aren't maxing out that $40K deduction, it's going to help you even more. You've got bonus depreciation and the mortgage insurance deduction. There aren't all positives out of this bill. There are lots of negatives that people have talked about. Of course, I'm specifically focusing on real estate only. I know people have said, hey, it's taking away food incentive programs for people and it's taking funding away for certain nonprofits. I'm not getting into that. This is strictly real estate only. The big negative that comes out of the big beautiful bill is it is not beneficial for solar. So they're going to have a rollback of federal clean energy credits that has major implications, especially here in California, where our solar panels thrive so much. So starting in 2026, incentives like the residential clean energy credit and energy efficient home improvement credit will expire, eliminating a 30% tax credit for solar panels and energy efficient upgrades. You guys, there are lots of clients and businesses, well, excuse me, not businesses, but because this is for residential, but lots of clients that took advantage of this for solar panels, for all sorts of energy efficient items. A 30% tax credit for this is a big deal when people are making big bucks here in California, and solar saves you so much money on your AC bill, your electrical costs, your chargings, etc. That is going away. So that's the bad news. The good news is it doesn't start until 2026. So if you've been waiting to put solar on your home or install energy efficient items, you still can do it, but you need to act very, very quickly, because when we hit January 1st, that goes away. So not a great thing for the solar business, not great for finding deductions on residential property, but of course you still have a chance if you move fast. So that's kind of a summary of the big beautiful bills, guys. I want to really hammer home, I'm not a CPA or tax professional. Call your CPA, talk to a tax attorney, strategize now on how to make things happen in 2025, because there's moving parts with the bill. Some start right away, some start in 2026, but it is very smart to start tax planning now. So that's the big beautiful bill. Now I'm going to get to the second part of the podcast, and this will go much more quickly, but I'm going to give you guys the data on second quarter data. What's interesting is everyone's seeing national news stories on how the real estate market is weak and that the economy and jobs are weakening a little bit. This huge COVID boom that we have is now gone. People aren't going to Austin anymore, or Nashville, or Florida condos are sitting on the market, and the national story is true. But what is interesting here is the South Bay and California is resilient. Yes, we lost so many residents during COVID. Yes, people are trying to earn California income but work in Texas or Florida, etc. Our real estate markets have remained resilient. So yes, real estate is soft in many areas across the country. It's just not showing up in the data here in the South Bay. So let's talk about it here. We do have some small pockets of weakness, but they are not significant, and it's quarter to quarter. We're going to start officially with Manhattan Beach. Its median price is at $3.125 million, you guys. That is slightly down year over year by 3.85%. And you guys, compared to Texas and Florida, Manhattan Beach is doing fine. That's essentially flat for that market because it was up big. It goes down just very little, and we are around higher medium price points in Manhattan Beach. Even though we are slightly down on price, sales are up 13%. So the market is stronger, or at least resilient here in Manhattan Beach, and is not following the national norm. If you part it out, you have areas like the Hill section and East Manhattan Beach continue to outperform. Those markets are up. People want bigger properties, where numbers were a little softer in the sand section if you parted out some areas. Moving on to Hermosa Beach, Median prices are up 6.63% to nearly $2.5 million price, while sales are slightly down 6.5%. So Hermosa is up. It's up larger than just inflation and continues to remain resilient as well. Redondo Beach as a whole is up almost 5% to 1.6 million and change, and sales are up by 7%. So another market that is up and staying more than resilient, outpacing inflation. Moving on to the Palos Verdes Peninsula, this is where some of the weakness is occurring, not in loads of the market, but in definitely pockets. I'm going to exclude Behind the Gates and Rolling Hills Estates. The data is small. That is our highest end market. There are huge volatile fluctuations, but covering the three remaining cities, we'll start with Palos Verdes Estates, which is down by 9.68%. It is down by just under 10%, you guys, to $2.8 million price. PVE has been weak for a while now. It had such a huge surge during COVID. It was basically matching with Manhattan Beach prices. It has now come down from there and has been very, very weak over the past few quarters. And sales are also down nearly 10%. You're also weaker in our largest market, our most affordable market, which is Rancho Palos Verdes. That is down 5.56% to a median price of $1.7 million, with sales slightly up by 2.54%. The lone bright spot, of course, is Rolling Hills Estates, which surged higher, almost 20% higher in median price. That's 19.5%. to just over $1.65 million. Sales were weaker, down by close to 20%, but man, that pricing has shot right up. So what do we take away from this, you guys? We are a little bit weaker on the hill. 2/3 of the market, if you want to call it, is down, where the smaller pocket of the market, Rolling Hills Estates, has stayed strong. Of the beach cities, you have Manhattan Beach slightly down, with Redondo and Hermosa Beach up. As a whole, for the beach cities in the Palos Verdes Peninsula, the market is resilient. You are seeing crazy amounts nationally. You are seeing crazy amounts of days on market, price reductions, surges in supply, and not great markets that were incredible surging COVID markets where they said California is dead. You guys, for the most part, our markets are up. They're resilient. Yes, supply is growing. They're still below historical trend lines. We're still growing, and sales remain strong. So that's the great news about Southern California and South Bay real estate. We are stable. When it comes into really picking areas, sure, you see weakness in pockets. I would tell you PV of the markets we've talked about as a whole is probably the weakest market. That's where you're going to find the most opportunities to end summer here, and where I think there'll be some amazing opportunities during the holidays. Whereas on the flip side, the beach cities remain strong with the exception of Manhattan Beach according to the numbers, but Manhattan Beach seems to just not slow down, and there seems to be endless cash buyers for new construction, keeping that market propped up. Areas like Torrance, where it's much more affordable, huge demand, solid pricing, even better than Palos Verdes. So really, if you're a first-time home buyer trying to eke into great schools in Torrance and lower price points, it is still really hard to get in there, where Palos Verdes is weaker. So that's some of the anecdotal evidence we're seeing. Our clients who are being patient in Palos Verdes are getting rewarded. Clients who are selling out of North Redondo and heading to the Hill are making great trades. But it's still rough on clients trying to break into the beach cities as first-time home buyers, or even Torrance. So that is the podcast in a nutshell. You guys, next recording, we have even more data that we're going to get into that's really juicy that I think you're going to love. In addition to last week, Fed President Jerome Powell coming out with a little bit of a dovish speech that has shot up the stock market and pushed rates down. If we get an idea of where rates may go, that is a really bullish sign for 2026. So I'm going to give you guys more juicy data, and we're going to talk interest rates and what that does a little glimpse in or a teaser of that episode is typically when rates come down by 0.5% or 1%, that is a boon for the market. So it's great for sellers and buyers. There's more competition, but if you're smart about it, typically most people don't catch up that rates are down big for 6 to 12 months. And if you take advantage of those lower rates early, you can typically pick up great deals before a bunch of buyers come rushing in. So I think there's going to be some opportunities in the holidays in early 2026 if we do get some rate reductions in the mortgage markets. But more on that next episode. You guys, thank you so much for joining me. Have a great end to your August and to the start of school, and we'll see you next time on the Richard Haynes Real Estate Show.